Hello, everybody. This is Debbie, from Teacher Success Coach with another episode of the Female Educators Roundtable. But on a Friday, we look at homeschooling or home education. It depends on which country you're from. It could be homeschooling. I think is England is homeschooling, and I think America is home education, or vice versa. I can't remember. Right. So on a Friday, that's what we discuss. People who've actually decided to remove the children from the traditional education and homeschool them themselves, because the education system doesn't work for everybody. We have been programmed and conditioned to feel that we must go to school and we must do certain things according to the school system. However, the school system just program us to prepare us to be in the capitalist society, which means you obey orders. You are not allowed to think. If you're thinking, it means that you have a problem. So you're not allowed to think. You're allowed to follow the rules and do as you're told. But we must remember, we are not dealing with robots, we're dealing with human beings. And not every child fit into that framework that we've been forced to. So when parents decide to take the children out, they're saying, hold on, I'm deciding for myself the direction I want my child education to go in. And I really support that. Yes, yes, yes. You guys are going to say, but Debbie, you're a traditional teacher. Yes, 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 I know that. That don't mean I follow the rule, because I don't agree with all the things the education system does, right? Because they try to program robots, and there's a individual who need to be critical thinkers. Anyway, guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. And let's welcome our guest lady, who is going to tell us about herself and tell us where she come from and about her journey. And I must demonstrate appreciation for her coming on the show to share her journey with us, to give us of her time. I'm really grateful for you giving your time to us to share your story. I'm really grateful for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank
So
you.
welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Miss Debbie. I am delighted to be here. It's a pleasure. Yes, I am homeschooling, and I've been. First of all, let me say I'm from Oklahoma, so I'm from the U.S. Born to teacher parents, teacher grandparents, a very traditional family of educators. And when the pandemic started, I knew I knew prior to the pandemic that schooling wasn't, traditional schooling wasn't really working for my oldest child. So when the pandemic started, I saw that as an opportunity to homeschool, and so we've been doing it ever since then. And there have been challenges. There's been a lot of learning and unlearning for me as a parent as well as my child, but it has been one of the best choices I've ever made for my children. It's been a really powerful journey for us as a family.
Thank you. Thank you for telling us why you began this journey, because, you know, the sad thing about it, a lot of parents, even though they feel that the system isn't working for the child, instead of seeing it as the system isn't working for the child, they feel that the child is not working with the system.
Right.
And that is not the case, because we need to also remember that not every system works for every child.
Right.
And we also know within the traditional education is like one size fits all. And we know that is not the case.
Right.
So when parents decide to take their children out of education, we need to give them more credit in believing that they know the child more than we do as educators. We are the childminder because we don't know the child as much as they do. And that is something that we need to reinforce in their head, that you made these children. So therefore you ought to know them a little bit more than we do, you know. So that's what's so interesting in all of that. Okay, so what were some of the barriers? Because you obviously said there were barriers. We know there must be barriers.
Absolutely. And, I don't know that the barriers or the struggles are ever completely gone. But so initially, the barriers for us were I was working in corporate America in a very traditional 8 to 5, 8 to 6 job. And so even, I know that there are a lot of parents who want to homeschool or who have thought about it or who understand that traditional schooling isn't really working best for their child. But then it's not just a matter of how can I homeschool or can I homeschool? It's how can I completely shift my lifestyle so that I can be there for my child. And so the biggest barrier initially was just figuring out how I could work from home, how I could maybe start a business so that I could generate income and, be home with my child and be able to be present to teach him. So what the pandemic did for us though is it removed some of the barrier. It removed a couple of the barriers in the sense that my son was no longer required to show up to school. And so he that was one barrier that broke down. I took a new job, and so that barrier kind of came down because I had the flexibility to work from home. So other barriers I would say were just and I don't even know if I would use the term barrier. But I do think that just getting to know ourselves and our children can be a barrier in a sense, because as parents, we've not been taught or empowered to take control of our children's learning or education. We've not been given the tools or just the support. So, coming from a background where my parents were educators and my grandparents were educators, I had felt like I had to prove why this homeschooling path was best for us and, make everybody believe that I was competent enough to teach my son. So I feel like those were the biggest barriers, were just the lifestyle change. At least where I live, the cost of living is such that most parents do both work outside the home. Mm-hmm. So it was that. It was finding the right curriculum or really identifying the curriculums that didn't work for us, and embracing like a more holistic lifestyle that was centered on learning and freedom. So yeah, I would say that those were our biggest challenges.
Thank you. You know what's interesting, as you were talking in terms of your parents were teachers, your grandparents were teachers, and you did the traditional thing. You went to school, you go through the system, got a corporate job, which you're supposed to be getting.
Of course, so yeah.
You follow all the rules, right?
Yes, until we didn't anymore, and now we follow our own rules.
Exactly. And I'm listening to you, and I'm sitting there smiling. I'm thinking she did everything she was supposed to do until halfway she think, you know what, this isn't working. No, right. I'm not going to follow any more rules. I'm going to follow our own rules and see what works for us, Right. So it's really interesting because halfway through you realize this rule they've put in place isn't working for you. It's not working for your children. So therefore you need to change the rule. So that's interesting. Thank you for that. Oh my goodness.
The rules work for the system, just to add, the rules work for the system. They want children to learn how to take orders, to kind of obey the rules, and to go out and work again in the capitalistic system. And there are just so many other ways. There's so many other ways.
It is so true, because that's what we are supposed to be doing in schools, is programming these children to work in the capitalist society, to uphold the 3%, is making the decision.
Yes.
We are not teaching them to become creative thinkers or be self-employed or entrepreneurs.
Yes.
We're not teaching them that at all. We're just teaching them how to be programmed and get out there and be on the, be robotic and be on the conveyor belt.
Yep, I agree.
It is so sad that we're not teaching them their alternatives. And it is up to us as parents and carers to say, hey, their alternative, if that one isn't working for you, don't think it's anything to do with you, It's not. You just don't fit into this system.
Right.
You know, and I think that's important that we remind our children and young people that it is not them, it is the system. Because there's sometimes that when we do certain things, it's not because we are dumb and we don't understand it, it's because that person may not be connected to us well enough to explain it. It's
Yes.
like as a teacher, when I'm explaining something to students and some of them understand it and the rest don't, all I say to them, you know what, guys, let your neighbor explain to you because your neighbor might be able to explain better than I can.
Yes.
Right? Because there's sometimes I'm saying it's like even this afternoon, I'm explaining something to this and I stand there and I was laughing because I said, half of you don't get it, do you? It's okay, don't worry, don't stress yourself. Speak to your next door neighbor. They might understand it better and explain to you better than I can. Mm-hmm. And some of them is able to do that. So we need to realize that we cannot connect with everybody. There's sometimes we need to say we don't, and then allow them to support each other, to explain to each other. It's okay to do that too.
That's really important.
Yeah. Thank you for that. How do you know that you are a good enough teacher for your children? After all, you're not a teacher.
Correct. I will say that just as an individual, my own self, that this is an insecurity that has come up more than once. I do these little check-ins with myself. We've been doing this 2.5 years, 3 years. And so every now and then I kind of like to reflect and just kind of check in with where I am. But I will say that in the beginning, I did not trust myself and felt that we had to enroll in an online homeschooling program, which is traditional homeschool on a computer. And it wasn't until a semester into that where I was going, I can lead my son to the information. Even the information that I don't currently understand, I can learn and I can relate and I can guide him to that information. So I would say that, maybe there are some people who just feel 100% competent and empowered as a home educator. But for me personally, I have just had to accept that I'm never going to be perfect. And that our method may not look like, if I was a teacher, I would probably bring some of that traditional schooling to the home education.
Yep.
But because it's home education and I'm not a teacher, I just have kind of allowed it to evolve. And if I don't know something, because my son is almost 9 now, and I know that at some point he will get into material that I may not feel qualified to teach, but I do feel empowered to guide him to, maybe a tutor or maybe a specific online class, or I feel confident enough to guide him to the information and empower him to find a learning style that works best for him. And so I would say I don't know. I don't know that I am qualified to teach him everything that he needs to know, but I am qualified as his parent to know him really deeply and to guide him in the direction that he needs to go, because I know my child.
That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. I think that is one of the most powerful things, because you know your child, so therefore you know how your child is likely to learn information better than anyone else. And it is so very true, because even as teachers, we don't have the answer. And I say to students when they ask me some question and I don't know, I say, sorry guys, I don't know. I say, let's Google it. Or you know what, let's tag that on for homework for tomorrow and we discuss it in tomorrow's lesson. I'm one of these teachers who quick to say that they don't know, because you know what, I'm a human being and I cannot have all the information in my head. Having said that, there's a lot of teachers out there who set themselves up to fail, who always feel that they need to demonstrate they have all the answers. And I think that's a no-no, that's damaging, because it's not real, it's a pretense. You cannot have all the answers even though you're a specialist. It's like last year, I was in one of the schools because I'm a supply teacher, so I long-term supply. So I go from school to school, which I love because I see the schools that have a lot of money, and I see the schools that are very, very poor. And I see how, how some school program children to be robotic, some of them allow them to be creative thinkers. So last year I was in a school and I said to the student, they asked me a question. I said, guys, I really don't know you. And I said, you know what? Let's Google that. I said, no, forget about Google. That's taking up time in my lesson. We're going to discuss that in tomorrow's lesson. Make sure you get the homework, etc. And the head of department, who was a newly qualified teacher, not fully qualified yet, but still in process, she ended up becoming the head of department. I'm not too sure. That's another story in itself. She said to me, oh, you're not supposed to tell the student that you don't know. You're supposed to demonstrate that you're a specialist. I said, pause. I said, I am a specialist, but I do not have all the information in my head. And I am not going to pretend that I do. And I don't have, it says, that's your business. You could tell them you have all the information, that's your business, but I'm not. And I'm far more qualified than you. And I've been in the profession a longer time than you have. So I am going to tell them I don't know the answer. Let's look it up and bring it for me tomorrow's lesson. No, according to her, this is demonstrating that I am not a specialist. Really? Hell no.
I think that it's so profound what you just said, though, because those children who hear you say, I don't know, but will find the answer, are going to have more confidence in themselves. And again, everything is programming. So if you hear every teacher act like they know everything about their field, you're going to feel like you have to know everything to be confident in yourself, as you grow. And I feel like you are doing the students such a service by acknowledging that I'm human too. And even though I've been doing this a long time, I don't know everything, and I can't, quote everything at any given moment. And that's so powerful, just for their development and their sense of how they view themselves,
Exactly. Because I think it also tells them it's okay not to know. It's okay not to know.
Yes.
It's like, you don't have all the answers, and it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay when you don't know the answer. So what?
Right.
It's not a big deal.
Right.
So, and I think that's where we're going wrong with students, because when we do these things, we tell them that they're not supposed to fail.
Right.
And those things could be damaging for the mental health, because they feel that they always have to be perfect and have all the answers. Damaging.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Do you see homeschooling as effective to teach the skills needed to navigate life, or even better than the mainstream education?
Oh, of course I do, because I've chosen this. I will say that given my experience, with my parents and my grandparents and how I went through traditional schooling and worked corporate jobs, that for someone who is interested in following a corporate path, or just the conventional path that most students have set out for them, that the structure of traditional schooling and the way that you're really fed the information and led, like, here, come here, this is where you go now, this is it, that maybe for some people that may be better, but I am raising free thinkers. I'm raising it's really, so my oldest is in the traditional school system. I see, not to get too off track, but I see how damaging that has been for his self-confidence, how obscure his sense of self has become now that he's a teenager in high school and he's looking to everyone else to tell him who he is. But for my middle son, who has been homeschooling the last few years, I 100% believe that that this will prepare him to go on and to be really empowered in who he is at a younger age, to know what he's interested in, and to take those interests that he has and to just find a path that allows him to turn that passion into a career. And so my son is not thinking in terms of traditional careers like we were taught to do as children. you know, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a banker, I want to be, I just feel like in school, when we talked about what we wanted to be when we got older, it was always something very traditional, a doctor, a, you know, that we had to follow these certain paths, go through traditional schooling, go to college or university, and then go on with the path. My son is already looking at how he can work for himself, how he can create a business that would allow him to help people and also, you know, fulfill his passions as well. So I feel like I am equipping him to be a free thinker, in that even if he does decide at some point that he wants to pursue a more traditional career path or something in corporate America, that he will be able to identify what aligns with him and his spirit. And I don't see him going and working a soul sucking job where he has to report to superiors and is not allowed to give his opinion. I see him choosing something that's more in alignment with his person. And I feel like home education, if it's done right, that's the best part, is that it teaches them to learn about themselves, to ask questions about themselves, to ask questions about the world, and ask, does this align? Does this feel good? If not, you know, I'm going to go learn about something else. I'm going to pursue something else. So hopefully that answered your question.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, because this actually, a lot of things you say, it is so true in terms of, yes, here you are, learn this. It is so very true. That is something I thought of, but the way you put it so nicely. That is so beautifully put. And it is so very, very true. And what is interesting is the fact that you are able to identify that your first son, you know, the confidence is not as fluid and as powerful as the second son, because the middle son is actually, he's himself. Mm-hmm. You know, he makes his decision and it doesn't matter what, because it's his decision. Whereas your first son is a little bit frightened to,
yes,
he should in case he get it wrong.
Yes.
And it is sad, because that's what the education system does, especially coming into secondary school, where they're becoming into teenagers, etc. Whereas in the primary school, they just take chances. They just do everything. They don't, you know, they take chances, and they just step out of the box, and they don't even think it's going to go wrong. They're just full of themselves, you know. But the minute they go to secondary school, I'm not too sure what we do to them.
Yeah.
It's like they're not going to go full in. They're going to try to wet their toes and come back out because they're afraid to get their whole feet wet. And it is so true. It is so true. It is so very true. And it's quite very sad as well. Eh?
I agree.
Very, very sad. Okay, thank you. What are some of the triumphs?
Integrating personal life, work life, learning. You know, the traditional path would have us separate ourselves and who we are as people from, you know, our lives at home, which most people in the traditional, you know, career path, traditional schooling, you're living life for a few hours in the evening. You have a few hours in the evening to sit with yourself, to be with yourself and your family. And then you have to stick to these routines so that you're able to wake up and report by 8 a.m. the next morning. So the trials of going from living, you know, separating personal life, work life, and school life, you know, there were barriers that had to come down. There was unlearning that had to take place, both for me as a parent and an individual as a mom. There was not so much unlearning that had to take place for my middle son, because he only went to 1 year of traditional schooling, not even a year. But I would say the trials come with, you know, those days when you wake up and you would just really rather go play outside. The weather's beautiful. And that feeling of, oh no, if I'm not teaching him curriculum today, that I'm failing him in some way. or we must get this curriculum done, because he does follow a curriculum right now. It's a very different conscious curriculum. We do yoga, we practice mindfulness, we cook together. We embrace all of these things that allow us to integrate our lives in such a way that, like, we're just waking up and being people every day. The work that I do is now something that I'm very passionate about. So yes, the trials just come when we as humans experience lows, or we experience a sudden lack of interest in something that we've been learning about or something that we've been talking about. And it's really, ultimately, it just comes down to a mindset shift and allowing ourselves to give ourselves flexibility and say, if we want to take a whole week off and go visit family and just play outside and share stories, that is also learning. That is also feeding my child's spirit. That is also that's also feeding, it's building his knowledge database about himself, about others, and it's creating a sense of awareness where, I don't know if you've experienced this as an educator, but how often a student will wake up not wanting to go to school and my stomach hurts. My stomach hurts. I need to call my mom. My stomach hurts. I need to go home. And they aren't able to identify that that's anxiety, or that is, a call to just take a rest day or to go be outside in nature. So, yeah, it just has been the unlearning and relearning how to integrate all of these aspects of our lives that we were never taught can fit together harmoniously. So it's bringing ourselves back to structure when we go without structure, or yeah, I would say that the trials for us are just the unknowns, and bringing ourselves back to a place of empowerment to choose what feels best today or next week or next year. And to do a lot of curriculum when he's very interested in the lessons, and when he's not very interested in the lessons, to choose something else. So yeah, just the mindset shift that has had to occur there.
Thank you for that. That's really, really powerful, because it is so very true. Because yesterday I had a student that came to me and said, Miss, I don't feel well. And I'm looking at her. I said, what's the matter? She said, I've got stomachache, but I'm going to go and have a rest. I said, okay, you have stomachache, that's fine. Just leave the lesson. So this morning I saw and I said to her, how are you? She said, oh, Miss, I'm feeling really good now. And I was just laughing, because it was a situation where, because I said to her, I said, were you feeling sick? She said, Miss, my stomach was hurting. And I think that sometimes we do have those days, as you rightly say, not able to identify, what exactly is it. And even though we identify, we don't know how to navigate it.
Right.
Because nobody have taught us how to navigate. So it's interesting when you have those things come up. And as you rightly say, it's like sitting with yourself and identifying what it is, and then see the next step. But it's sitting with yourself, that's the most important factor. Sitting with yourself, and through sitting with yourself, you'll be able to start identifying some of the challenges.
Right.
It's interesting. Thank you for that. You had said earlier on you follow curriculum, right?
For the most part.
Okay. Give us a typical day, what a day feels like or look like in your home in terms of the educational journey.
So we have a very loose daily schedule. And again, I say loose, it's just there to provide us like some basic framework. We don't always follow it. But we wake up with no alarms. I've set an alarm, maybe I can count on one hand how many times I've set an alarm in the last few years. And so we wake up, we're in a natural cycle of waking up around 8. We do breakfast, we share, I'm very big on gratitude and intention. So we like to talk about, while we're eating, we like to talk about what we're grateful for, what our intention is for the day or the week. If it's a Sunday, we talk about our intention for the week. And when we're done eating, sometimes if my son has a lot of energy, he might want to play before we do lessons. So he's allowed to do that. But genuine or not genuinely, but generally we will sit down and I will do my work. I can get a lot of my work done from a computer. So I'll sit down with my desk adjacent to his. And we will, so there's maybe 7 subjects that he works with in this curriculum. Again, I'm very big on intuition and doing, what feels good, what draws his interest. So we don't necessarily have specific subjects that he does on certain days. We'll go through the curriculum and I pay attention to what piques his interest, what feels appropriate for the day. And I will get some work done and assist him, be close enough that I can assist him. If he has questions, we'll go over instructions and things like that. I'll get him going. And we just kind of collaborate throughout the morning. We take breaks if we need to. Also, I have a toddler, like I said, so she likes to sit next to him and color or read books or just imaginative play with her little figures. And they know that that's learning time. We do learning time in the mornings, then we do lunch. And, some days it may last longer than others. Some days he's engaged in lessons that may last until 2 or 3. Other days we finish at noon. And so then the afternoon is really just about self-exploration and relaxed play. I don't necessarily guide them in the afternoons. They just kind of have outdoor time if the weather permits. We have books that we read either in the afternoon or at bedtime. Once a week, we go to the library and check out new books, and we spend some quiet time there, just kind of exploring. Yeah, I would say that for the most part, that's what our days look like, because that's what works.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah. I really like the fact that, you support him if he needs it. So it seems like he needs to take responsibility.
Yes, absolutely.
Which sounds so powerful, because he know, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And therefore, if I don't do this, this is, it's going to be carried on in the next day.
Yes.
And I think that's really is good. That's really is powerful, because you're saying ultimately that you need to take responsibility at an early age.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, he's a child. And so there are those days where I find he's kind of dragging his feet, doesn't want to do his lessons. And I just remind him, that this has to be done one way or another. So if you feel like you need some time to yourself, take it, but just know that you're responsible here. You're accountable for your own learning. And I actually had that conversation with him this morning. And as soon as I said that, he hopped up and went back to his desk and got started back on his learning. So yeah, it seems to work for us.
Thank you so very much. Okay, the final one is, there are a lot of people out there who would like to be homeschooling, stroke home educating their children. For whatever reason, there is a bag of fears, anxiety, uncertainty, the feeling not good enough, etc., etc. What 3 tips would you give anybody out there who in that crossroads? No, they should, but the voice in the head saying that who you think you are, etc., etc.
The advice that I would give them is to listen to your spirit, listen to, not everyone identifies as spiritual, listen to your own inner wisdom, because if something is calling you to do this, then I would say it's not for no reason. You know your child, you have a deeper knowing of what's best for your child than any school system, any teacher. And I don't think that you have to be perfect. You don't have to be a perfect parent or an all-knowing home educator to facilitate learning for your child. So if the barrier or the fear is around competency, explore that more. Look into a curriculum that may offer more guidance or more tools and resources, and they're out there. And if the barrier or the fear is related to lifestyle and to, how to make it work where you can still earn money and things like that. There are so many remote jobs out there that don't require you to be engaged and at a desk for 8 hours a day. I am a freelancer. I run my own business at this point. And so our jump was about homeschooling and freelancing at the same time. And there was a lot of fear, but trust yourself. I mean, that's the biggest advice, is trust yourself and trust that if you don't have the answers, that you have the tools to find the answers. Or, you may know someone. There may be a local homeschool co-op where you could go meet with parents. You could go talk with them, ask them what works. I know that works for a lot of other homeschool educators who I have met. They kind of used a homeschool co-op as a bridge. So they may take their kids to a co-op 3 days a week, and they're there present with their children, learning and seeing what works best. So I would just encourage anybody who is interested in homeschooling, to just do the research. Google is your best friend. Find the homeschool co-ops, connect with other parents, and find what works for them. And that will remove some of the fear as you empower yourself with more knowledge.
Thank you so very much. That is so very true. What you say is so powerful, because one of the things we tend not to want to trust and fear is ourselves.
Absolutely.
We are so afraid of this important being, it's called the self, that we seem to feel that everybody else is able to tell the self, which is us, what we're capable of doing, apart from we telling ourselves that this is what we're capable of doing. Why are we waiting for people to validate our thoughts?
Yeah, that's it. It's the validation. Yeah,
it is so sad,
but we don't need it.
Exactly.
We don't. But again, I would venture to say that a lot of the parents who have fear around homeschooling, who are curious about it but feel fear is holding them back, we were probably raised in a traditional schooling system where we were taught to grade ourselves and feel like, oh, I'm failing, or it's a mindset shift, and you have to really challenge your mindset to gain the confidence and feel empowered to make decisions for yourself and your children.
Thank you so very much. We also need to remember that the magic is outside of the comfort zone. Although it's very fearful out there you see the magic, there you see the rainbow, the glitter, the excitement. There it is. Thank you so very much for that. Have you got anything else you want to say?
I am a big proponent for freedom and breaking free from, the capitalistic system, and asking yourselves questions, asking your children questions. I think that's where you invite that personal power and magic in that you just spoke of. So I'm rooting for everyone who is curious about homeschooling to pursue it and to release the fear and take control of their children's future.
That's so powerful. Take control of your children's future. It is so important. Don't put it in the hands of someone who don't even know your child. The hands of, you put in your child's future in my hands. I don't know your child. I'm doing the best I can. Well, I really don't know your child. There's some teachers who, feel that it is important to continue to program them. It's interesting because I've got so many stories in terms of education. I don't shout at students. And it's like they're saying to me, oh, miss, I said to one of them yesterday, you need to go and get your folder. She was so petrified to go and get a folder because she's afraid of a teacher. Because she said, oh, the teacher shouts so much. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. Why do you need students to be afraid of you?
Yeah.
It's not instilling respect, it's instilling fear. But that's what the education system does.
I agree. I 100% agree. Thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed getting to talk about this, especially with someone who is inside the school system. How cool that you're advocating for home education. That's really powerful and really important work you're doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Facebook people. If any of you want to come onto the show to share your story with us, because everybody's story is very different, everybody's journey is very different, I'll really appreciate it, and I'll give you the opportunity to share your story with us. The more stories we have, the more we'll be able to empower other people to take the plunge. It is necessary to take your child's education in your hand. Don't put it in someone's hand like me who don't really know your child, who's trying the best. Anyway, thank you guys. Have a good evening, night, morning where you are. Take care, stay blessed, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday next week.